Depression. Okay, well, tonight I was joking around. I was thinking I was gonna teach you how to cause depression and people you don't like, but no, we're gonna actually do this right. Okay, we're gonna go over what depression is, depression, mood disorders, bipolar disorder, and the causes, the theories behind it, and the cures. Because right now it's affecting everyone. I mean, this is the actual definition of depression. A state of low mood, aversion to activity that can affect a person's thoughts, behaviors, feelings, and sense of well-being. Now, depression has been around throughout time. I mean, in ancient Greek, you're talking black bile or melancholy. This is, imagine black bile. You can't get lower. Now, they thought, even Hippocrates says, fears and despondencies, if they last a long time, it's almost like there's something wrong there. Now, in the 17th century, a brilliant guy came up with the anatomy of melancholy, and he came up with a solution that we're going to explore because this is actually more advanced than most of the therapies done today. The solution in the 17th century, healthy diet, sufficient sleep, music, meaningful work, and talking about the problem with a friend. I know that seems radical, so don't worry. The modern science came in the 50s and thought it was a chemical imbalance. And that thought is still proposed today in all the advertisements. And then you're talking, it's broken up into manic depressive, bipolar disorder. And then in 1965, they thought about serotonin. And we're going to explore that as well. And then the DSM-3, I think we're up to DSM-5 now. It's Diagnostic and Statistics Manuals. This is the book that is, your disorder is looked up and then you're labeled and treated. So we're going to look at all of these depressive mood disorders. And when you look at it, not only is bipolar, anxiety, seasonal affective disorder, we're talking post-traumatic stress, postpartum, okay? All of these are different disorders listed in the diagnostic manual and what you could be labeled with. So when we're talking about depression, we're talking about all of these things, the depressive mood disorders. Now, how big is this? It's big. I mean, with 350 million people worldwide. Now, this is the diagnosed group, because you're going to see some of these numbers don't add up. When they say about 16 million people in America have it, but 1 in 20, these are the ones that are clinically depressed taking the medications. However, it's estimated that 1 in 2 Americans are depressed. Don't worry, you guys are from the UK. You're cool. No, but when you start looking at this, it's like, well, wait a second. What is it? An overdiagnosed? We're 1 in 33 kids, 1 in 8 adolescents, clinical depression. So what's going on? It is this group just messed up. $80 billion, okay, the annual cost. We're talking lost work days, 12 billion. I mean, this is a very expensive industry. Now, when we're talking depression and suicides, 2 out of every 3 suicides are depressed. Now, when we look at this, it's also the effect of the medication, a side effect. So it's not just the drugs that they're using or the condition that's causing it. Now, it's the leading cause of death, 15 to 24-year-olds. And we're even talking the 4th leading cause of death under 10 to 14-year-old children. I mean, this is nuts. Now, illnesses can cause depression, that we know. I mean, if you're hit by a car, run over, lost, cancer, stroke patients, heart attacks, we're talking Parkinson's, substance abuse, diabetes, all of these will have an increase in depression. Why? Because you can't do stuff. Now, when we look at this, the difference between depressed person and the effects, I mean, when we're talking about sad, anxious, empty, hopeless, helpless, worthless, guilty, ashamed, restless, and when we look at the effects of that, you're talking loss of interest, fatigue, chronic pain, difficulty in concentrating, memory loss. I mean, this is a major issue. So now there's a biopsychosocial model, and this is the bio, which is how your body functions. The psychology is how your mind functions, and social is how your social interaction. And so when we look at this, we need to look at each one. What are the causes? So when we look at the social factors or psychology factors, loss of a loved one, bereavement, neglect, mental abuse, child. So all of these, bullying, social isolation, when you look at this, these are things that can cause anxiety, depression, and those disorders. Does that make sense? Okay, now the tough part, if you're experiencing this, is that a medical diagnosis or a medical problem, or is it something that your body is exposed to from a social environment? So we have to look at this. Now, when the doctors were looking up, because there's such a massive rise in mood depressive disorders now, they came up with 3 different ideas: a genetic, a circadian rhythm, and the monoamine hypothesis. And we're going to go through each one of these theories. Okay, and then we're also going to go on the facts, because if this is affecting, 1 in 2 Americans, and kids are dying from it, and it's costing billions of dollars, okay, and lots of lives, let's look at what causes it. Okay, does that make sense? Because the medical world is a reductionist thinking where they take one big problem, they chunk it down, and they try and look for the smallest aspect. So let's look at the genetic factors. Well, in 2003, they actually had a study that came up and they said, look, depression's genetic. It has a genetic origin. And that was just like, oh, brilliant. We can identify the people that are going to be depressed and drug them before they get depressed. Honest to God. Okay. So in 2007, they had 11 replications of the study, and most, if not all, were negative. In 2009, 20 replicative studies, all of them were negative. So they can't reproduce it. They keep trying to find out the genetic problem that was found in this one study, and they can't find it. So then they did the largest mega-analysis of genome-wide association for major depressive disorder. 127,000 people in the study. We're going to for sure identify the genetic cause, find out those poor people that are going to develop it on a genetic basis, and drug them before they get the symptoms. Does anyone think that that's ridiculous? Okay, good, just checking. Okay, although the largest genome-wide analysis of major depressive disorder yet conducted, high prevalence means that the sample is still underpowered to detect genetic defects typical for complex traits. Therefore, we are unable to identify a robust and replicable findings. Okay, Journal of Molecular Psychiatry, 2013. There is no genetic aspect of it. And the difference between genetic and genetic expression, this is something that they're totally missing. You can have a gene, and it's up to you to express it or not. Okay, does that make sense? And we're going to go into now the circadian rhythms. And this is actually something that, as an animal species, being a human being on the planet, we actually do have to live within certain parameters. And what's interesting is light. Light is absolutely essential to maintain circadian rhythm. So does that mean, like in the winter time, if there's low full spectrum light, or if you're inside a lot, I know inside of our clinic now we have full spectrum lighting. We've had this for years. So this aids to the healing. But what if you're in an office environment that doesn't have that? And so when we look at this, rapid eye movement in sleep, the deep sleep that we were talking about last week on sleep, it requires a low level of serotonin. Now you might think, well, wait a second, isn't that a neurotransmitter responsible for feeling good? Yeah, it is. But what we need is we need a low level of that in order to achieve deep sleep. So let's look at light. Sure enough, light deviation is related to decreased activity, okay, of abnormal sleep cycles. Okay, when we look at light therapy targets serotonergic systems that has a regulatory effect on serotonin levels. So light exposure actually can affect serotonin levels. Now, so we know that light is important. But how many psychiatrists are saying, look, we just got to get you exposed to a full spectrum light. We need you to take a walk outside or sit in front of a sun lamp. Okay, I mean, it's the simplest, most basic aspect. So now let's look at the chemical imbalance, okay, or the monoamine hypothesis. Now, monoamines, there's a number of the most common ones: serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline. And when we look at it, dopamine, of course, that's produced in the base of the brain. Serotonin's mainly stored in the gut or enteric system. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, those are produced in the adrenal glands. And we look at those neurotransmitters, and sure enough, the hypothesis. Now, a hypothesis is an idea. Is a hypothesis proof or an idea? It's an idea that you need to have proof. So the hypothesis is that there's a deficit of certain neurotransmitters that are responsible for depression. Now, here's the Archives of General Psychiatry. Serotonin may help regulate other neurotransmitter systems, and decreased serotonin activity may permit these systems to act in an unusual and erratic patterns. Now, may. Okay, so let's look at this. When we look at it, the two main drugs that they're being sold to you are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, okay, and the other ones are the monoamine oxidase inhibitors. Now, direct-to-consumer advertising, we're one of the few countries in the world, I think it's just us in New Zealand, that does DTC or direct-to-consumer advertising. Ask your doctor if this is right for you. Have you heard that? Okay, it's psychotic. Because right before the commercial says that, they tell you, yeah, if you're allergic to this drug or any of the ingredients in this drug, don't take it. How the hell do you know if you haven't taken it? Do you know what I mean? And how does a doctor know how the Paxil is going to work with the beta blocker that's going to work with the antidepressant that works with the sleep pill that works with the muscle relaxant? Nobody knows. It's a complete farce. Now, all of these direct-to-consumer advertisements, they're saying that it's a chemical imbalance. Okay, so they're going on this idea, this hypothesis, that there's an imbalance in chemicals in depressed and anxious people. I mean, you've seen the commercials. Now, they're one of the best-selling drugs, the SSRIs, in the medical field. So when we look at it, let's look at some of the advertisements. I mean, you already know when you see the girl running through the field of flowers, you know what I'm thinking about? Has anyone run through a field of flowers? You get bit by bees, there's friggin' mosquitoes. It's sick, okay? Okay, I think, good God, woman, you know, go to the mountains where there's nice, cool snow. Okay, but anyway, you're running through the fields of flowers, okay. Celexa helps restore the brain's chemical balance by increasing the supply of a chemical messenger in the brain called serotonin. Side effects may be dizziness, nausea. Okay, these are quotes from the advertising people, okay, that are trying to submit it into your brain so you can go in and ask your doctor if Celexa is right for you. Now, here's one of the main sales, okay, the Prozac one. When you're clinically depressed, one thing that can happen is a level of serotonin, a chemical in your body may drop. To help bring serotonin levels back to normal, the medicine doctors now prescribe most often is Prozac. Okay, now, that's the advertisement. What I did is I went to the package insert, because you might think, well, they're telling me that it changes a chemical in my brain, right? That's what they just said. That's what they're advertising direct to the public, saying that their product does something, right? Okay, this is off the package insert. The exact mechanism of Prozac is unknown. It's presumed to do something in the central nervous system, but we don't know. It's unknown. We haven't a clue. Okay, so is that a lie or a lie? Wait, the drug companies are lying to you? Okay, so now let's just look at the advertisement, how they're trying to suck you into this, and they're sucking doctors into this as well. Chronic anxiety can be overwhelming, but it can be overcome by Paxil. Yes, the most prescribed medicine of its kind for generalized anxiety. Works to correct the chemical imbalance. Okay, God, this is amazing. Okay, what about Zoloft? Related to the imbalance of natural chemicals between nerve cells. Oh my gosh. So these things actually fix a problem. So is there a chemical imbalance? Well, let's find out at how much money these things are making, then we'll look into the research. First, it's a $330 billion industry. Now remember when they're saying about half of the Americans have it, but 16 million people are diagnosed with it? Why are there 270 million prescriptions a year written for it? Okay, for these antidepressants. When we look at it, a 400% increase in growth in depression. Now, is that they're better diagnosed or it's better marketing? Don't say better marketing. We don't know. We've never done a study. We do know that 1 in 4 women, okay, between 50 and 64 are taking these toxic drugs. Now, what happens if you fall in for that advertisement and you have to take it? You know, oh no, I only take Zoloft, but it's the smallest dose. Do you know how many times I've heard that? Yeah, I'm taking Prozac, but you know, it's really the smallest dose. You know, I know. You know, I was going to take Hemlock in the smallest dose. Okay, so now the antidepressants. Okay, we're talking, you know, of course, if you take an antidepressant for 5 years, or the, you know, MAO inhibitors or the SSRIs, within 5 years you have a 50% increase in bipolar disorder, which is very, very hard to correct. But look at this. If you're pregnant and you're taking it, 87% increased risk of autism for your child. We're talking increased bone fractures, spinal fractures, 45% increase in stroke. Heart disease, diabetes, doubles your risk of suicide. So are these safe and effective? Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see, because, you know, remember, what are they supposed to do? They're correcting a chemical what? Imbalance. A chemical imbalance. Okay, so let's just see if the data, if the research back this up, or if they're absolutely lying to yourself. Okay, now here, this is a clinical textbook for psychiatry. It addresses serotonin deficiency, has an unconfirmed hypothesis. This is the textbook that psychiatrists learn from, and they're saying it's not true. Okay, this one, the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry. The hypothesis has enjoyed considerable support since its attempts to provide a pathophysiologic explanation for the actions of antidepressants. The actions of antidepressants. I'm sorry, what was the clinical mechanism of Prozac? Nobody knows. It's unknown. Okay. So, however, its original form, it's clearly inadequate, as it does not provide a complete explanation for the actions of antidepressants, and the pathophysiology of depression itself remains unknown. Now, this is the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry. What you're going to see, though, is when they're stating, and this is the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, the pathophysiology of depression itself remains unknown, you're going to find out that that's not true. We know the cause of depression, we know the causes of depression, and we know the solution to depression. But again, let's look at the monoamine hypothesis. Is this really serotonin? A serotonin deficiency for depression has not been found. Harvard Medical School. It's so far, there are no clear and convincing evidence that monoamine deficiency accounts for depression, and that there is no real monoamine deficit. And again, this is Essential Pharmacology, Psychopharmacology 2000. When we look at a science writer, The Undiscovered Mind, given the ubiquity of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and the multiplicity of its functions, it's almost meaningless to implicate it in depression, as if to implicate blood flow or blood. I mean, it's not accurate. Now, this guy is the psychiatrist. When you're looking up serotonin, now he's the winner of the Bennett Award, okay, for his research on serotonin metabolism. Would anyone want to listen to this guy? I'm thinking, you know, when you're doing research, let's find a guy that's spent his career doing research on the one subject, the one monoamine that I want to see, okay? What does he say about it? I spent several years of my career doing full-time research on brain serotonin metabolism. Hey, man, that makes me want to read it. Okay? But never saw any convincing evidence that any psychiatric disorder, including depression, results from a deficiency of brain serotonin. In fact, we cannot even measure serotonin levels in a living human being. So there's no way to test this theory. I'm sorry, what did the commercial say? A chemical imbalance. It's like, you lying bastards, okay? These people are already depressed and you're lying to them, okay, to give them a drug that leads to suicide. And I mean, it's just psychotic. Okay, so when we look at this, let's look at serotonin. Okay, now there's no way to really measure the imbalance, but we do know it has some functions. Okay, now it's derived from tryptophan, but 90% of the body's serotonins is held in these enterochromaffin cells of the intestinal tract. Now, these have certain functions that we know, they have certain functions that we suspect. Okay, so let's look at fact and our hypothesis. Well, one thing we know that since 90% of the body's serotonin's in the gut, you've heard us say that before, what kind of things can negatively affect it? Well, we know toxins, so we know vaccines can negatively affect the intestinal tract and serotonin levels. Bacteria, or loss of the bacteria, can affect it. Viruses, irradiation, cancer, chemotherapy. I mean, we're talking everything toxic that can negatively affect the gastrointestinal tract can negatively affect that. Now, I like this. Journal of Psychiatry and Neuroscience. Little is known about specific contribution of serotonin to the neurobiology of emotion and mood in healthy people. They just don't know. Now, can you see the problem with this? Okay, now let's look at the functions of serotonin, what we think we know and what we know. We do know it regulates intestinal movement. It can regulate mood, appetite, and sleep. Now, if you regulate mood, appetite, and sleep, can that have a positive effect or a negative effect on your emotions? Yes. No kidding, we're talking about mood disorders. Plays a role in cognitive functioning, memory, and learning. Is growth factor for wound healing, regulates bone mass, regulates cardiovascular growth factor. Now, it's thought to be a contributing factor, but we don't know. We do know it regulates mood. Now, when we look at this, there is a structure that we can measure that's smaller in people with depression and larger in people that aren't depressed. It's called the hippocampus. Now, when we look at this, so wouldn't it be, if we know that this is an organ that we can measure, it's not some hypothetical brain chemistry. It's small in people that have depression and psychosocial problems with their brain, okay, how they relate to the world. And it's larger in people that don't have this, okay? Now, contributing factors, shrinkage and atrophy of the hippocampus are associated with depression. Bam, fact, done. Contributing factors. So let's find out what shrinks that hippocampus and what grows it. Late adulthood, so decreased blood flow. Let me see, what kind of drugs decrease blood flow? Don't say blood pressure drugs. Yeah, blood pressure drugs. Okay, what about the accumulation of environmental toxins? What about vaccines? Could that be why there's a 400% increase in this? Could that be why we're seeing suicides in 10 to 14-year-olds? Yeah, because it does. It damages the intestinal tract. Now, here's the Journal of Behavior Pharmacology. The available evidence suggests that the hippocampus plays an important role in the pathophysiology of depression and bipolar disorder. So this is science, baby. So let's see what shrinks the hippocampus and what grows it. Okay, does that make sense? Because there is no chemical imbalance, but there can be certain toxin that the brain is exposed to. So what medications do we know? It says on the label that they cause depression. Benzodiazepam. So this is going to be Valium. This is going to be the muscle relaxants, sleep drugs. Okay, very popular. Beta blockers. Okay, other blood pressure medications. Steroids, contraceptives, sedatives, opioids. I mean, amphetamines. Okay, antidepressants. How many kids are taking Ritalin? You know, they call it kiddie cocaine, and it causes depression. Okay, steroids. Anybody with asthma? Anybody with skin disorders? Okay, that are taking steroids. Do you know that it causes, according to the American Journal of Psychiatry, glucocorticosteroids increase the risk of suicidal behavior and neuropsychiatric disorders? How often are these prescribed? It's just criminal that they don't tell you more. Plus, okay, now when we look at this, what other type of toxins are we exposed to? Do you know that high fructose corn syrup, and we're not even talking that it's genetically modified, just that fructose, okay, can decrease brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this is key. There's a key hormone that that promotes healthy neurons. So you're decreasing the body's ability to produce healthy neurons, guaranteed. And it's critically low in depressed people. So we do know that we can measure brain-derived neurotropic factor. We can measure that. We can measure the hippocampus. This whole other thing of measuring serotonin or chemical imbalance, that's a psychosis. These guys are just trying to lie. British Journal of Psychiatry, if you have a diet high in processed foods, you get a 58% increased risk of depression. MSG, we know this is an excitotoxin. We know that the American government has allowed food manufacturers to put it in underneath a whole list of different names because people are getting educated on this. So if it's a packaged food and it says hydrolyzed proteins or calcium or sodium caseinate or soy protein isolate, those are all buzzwords that could also mean MSG. And we're even seeing that. So this is something I usually put up at the end. But I want you to see that this is the solution. When we read that 17th century guy that said, you know, exercise, work, good diet, hang in with your friends, okay, that's it. Let's look at each aspect of this, okay, has the solution, okay, and the cause. Nervous system. Is the nervous system important? Yeah, it controls and coordinates every function of the body. Does that mean it controls hormone function? Does it control the proprioceptive responses or how the brain views the body, how the brain views the environment? Of course it does. Neurologic imbalances lead to disruption of endocrine function. This is why the nervous system is essential. Chiropractic care is essential to stimulate the nervous system to promote healing and function. I love this, the Journal of Upper Cervical Chiropractic Research, 2013. 76% of the patients that they studied who reported mental and emotional improvement as well as positive changes in stress. Of course, you're changing proprioceptive responses. You're changing how the brain views the environment. I mean, the benefits. Can you imagine if you went to somebody with pain, productivity, and a poor or some type of trauma, and they went in and said, look, we're going to alleviate pain, we're going to boost your productivity, improve cognitive function, reduce dependency or eliminate medications like 100% of the time, improve the quality of sleep, reduce your stress, and boost the immunity. Would that have a beneficial effect on your mood? No kidding, okay? I mean, it's like, okay, this patient came in yesterday, and I got to tell you, okay, I've got one son that's 30, one son that's 23, and you know, a kid that comes in 32, in my world, that's a kid, and his family is saying, look, you got to take an antidepressant, you got to take this. And I'm thinking at 32, he's had about 59 vaccines, he gets a flu shot every year, his gut's destroyed, he eats fast food, he doesn't have good work environment, and everybody's pushing an antidepressant on. Now imagine, because he's responding to extreme stress. This is his x-rays, massive abnormal bowel gas. We're looking at multiple traumas. I don't know what he was doing when he was a kid, maybe skateboarding, something, but it all caused multiple traumas, okay? Imagine if you go up, you're in World War I, you see a guy stuck in a foxhole, bombs are going off everywhere. He's got physical, chemical, and emotional stress, right? Okay, and the doctor goes in there and says, you know, I see a way to deal with this stress. Take this Prozac, this will help you. Can you see how psychotic that is? He's still going to have the physical, chemical, and emotional stress, right? It's so far beyond common sense. I don't know if these doctors have common sense completely removed or it's just partially removed. I mean, what we're looking at is somebody that used to have depression, somebody that is currently depressed, and we're talking bipolar. Do you think that those, and these are both people standing up straight, do you think if your body is like this, that's going to have an alteration of brain function? Does she need to see a nervous system doctor to get her nervous system corrected? Yes or yes? I mean, it's obvious. What about exercise? Can exercise change that hippocampus, that one structure that we can measure? Yes, it can. It increases the size of the hippocampus, improves memory. Aerobic exercise is phenomenal. It increases blood flow to the brain. Exercise increases oxygen to the brain. It releases toxins. I mean, moderate exercise can reverse normal brain shrinkage by 2%, effectively reversing age-related hippocampal degeneration by 1 to 2 years. I mean, it's incredible. When we look at the Psychology Review, demonstrate that loss of hippocampal volume in late adulthood is not inevitable and can be reversed with moderate intensity. Reversed, that means if your hippocampus is shrinking, if you've had years of pain, loss of mobility, you can't exercise, you can't move, by God, even the smallest movements can get it grown back. And I'm talking, I've got women in their 80s. It was one gal, 88 years old. She had her leg cut off in 1979. She's got one leg, and I've got her exercising. Okay? No, her name is not Eileen. That was just rude, sir. No, one leg? Okay. Am I the only one that got that? That's really bad. Okay. Okay, so when we look at this, I mean, what we're finding research on physical exercise is that exercise is at least as good as antidepressants. At least as good? Really? Okay, mind-body medicine. It's not at least as good, it's the only solution. Now also, let's look at vitamin D, proper nutrition, because when we talk about nutrition, or we talk about nerve supply, we talk about exercise, we talk about nutrition. Vitamin D, phenomenal. Do we tell people to get outside, get appropriate light, you can supplement with vitamin D if you're in an area that's far away from the sun. People with low levels of vitamin D are 11 times to be more prone to depression. This book, I don't recommend. Well, actually I do. If you're an actual clinician and you want to learn about phospholipid spectrum disorders in psychiatry and neurology, $258 book. And I'm about to start to read it for the second time. Okay, it's miserably long, but it's brilliant. It's these group of psychiatrists that have study after study after study that totally blow holes in this hypothesis of chemical imbalances. But there is a nutrition deficiency of omega-3s. The animal fat-based omega-3s are one of the most important supplements that you can get for the mind, for the brain. I mean, it's incredible. Optimizing your gut flora. This is essential to have healthy bacteria in there. Where is 90% of the body's serotonin? In the intestinal tract, okay? We need to have a healthy intestinal tract to utilize the nutrients and to break them down and to get your body and brain functioning correctly. They used to call it a gut mind or a gut brain. Healthy bacteria, eliminate processed foods. Organic plant-based diet is good. Healthy fats like coconut oil, fermented veggies, probiotic supplements, incredible. And then sleep. Is sleep vital? Yes. And we talk an entire hour about sleep, but remember, if you have appropriate light exposure during the day, it's going to start to initiate that natural circadian rhythm. And you can reset that circadian rhythm. You can change your sleep patterns within 21 days guaranteed if you follow the certain patterns that we talk about in our sleep lecture. It's absolutely essential. Then meditation. Meditation can literally alter the structure of the brain. You can change the size of the hippocampus. Researchers at Harvard and Yale, our data suggests that meditation practice can promote cortical plasticity in adults, important to cognitive and emotional processing and well-being. Meditate and pray every day. I mean, it's not religious fanaticism. It's intelligent if you want cells to regenerate. I mean, when we look at this, what kind of tools can you use? And I get people all the time that have this, they're owning a disease, then they can't get out of that. You know, they're depressed all the time. They've lost a child, they've lost a job, they've lost a lover, they've lost family, friends, parents. I had this 16-year-old kid, and this was about 15, 16 years ago. She comes in, she's living with her aunt. She came to me for migraines. She's living with her aunt because both her mom and dad were killed in a car wreck. And she's taking antidepressants. I said, "Hun, no, it's not a medical condition you have. You just experience life." Okay, so there's a way to deal with this. If you have loss or grief, I totally recommend the DeMartini breakthrough process, because once you've handled grief effectively, and I mean effectively, not where you lose the memory of the incident, you're left with love and gratitude. And there's an actual method that you can use to break down the process to where if you have loss or grief, you are left with only love and gratitude. It's the most brilliant, beautiful process I've ever seen, because you really can't change your event. You can change your response to that event, and that totally changes the outcome. Emotional freedom technique is excellent as well. We do a whole talk on that. But this one, neurolinguistic programming, is probably my favorite, because this one is the most important and quick responding that you can get. So if you have somebody, and let's say, I mean, if you're watching this now, okay, and you have somebody or you're experiencing depression, emotions are chemicals secreted by your brain. Okay, that's it. Emotions are chemicals secreted by your brain, and your cells respond in kind. So if you think of, you know, the beautiful person running through the field, if you think of you know, you hear the whistle of the ice cream truck and you want to run out and get it like you were 5. If you smell baked bread, you know, whatever thing that you can think about right now that brings you joy inside, you know, a little kid laughing or something like that. Okay, think about that. And that right now is an emotion, and your brain is secreting a chemical, and your cells are going to respond in kind. Okay, with either growth or cell regeneration, or if you think of fear, depression, and anxiety. I mean, when you look at this sheet, how many times and I just talked with a gal today who's saying, you know, I can't get out anymore. You know, my mom has got anxiety and depression. I got to watch her all the time. She's actually got dementia now, and I can't go, you know, out with my friends. I can't even go walking at all. And I'm going, hun, I've talked to you for 30 seconds, and you told me 5 things you can't do. Okay, I'm just at the end. You know, you can just like. I didn't say the F word. I interrupted. I bleeped myself. So don't worry. Okay. So you look at this, and it's just like, good God, you're self-programming your brain to respond, to have your cells respond to a certain chemical assault. So we can change that. Now the I am is super important, and you're going to put I am before each one of these words. And when we look at this, I am is probably the most powerful single thing that you can do to reprogram the hardwiring in your brain to change the chemical assault on your body. But also body posture, volume, and intonation. Okay, and breathing is vitally important. This is what I do every morning to get here. I get up at 4, man, I'm here at 4:45. I'm seeing patients at 5 in the morning. What's it now, 8, you know? So you can do this to change how your brain is wired. And if you say, okay, you see my body posture? Okay, heads forward, pulling on the brainstem. That's altering dopamine production right now. I keep my head up. That takes the pressure off the brainstem. I can now produce appropriate hormone response to the environmental stimulus. If I say, I am sad, I'm tired, I'm achy, I'm sore, or if I say, I'm dynamic, I'm strong, I'm vibrant. I know, you felt better just right there, didn't you? You're like 4 feet away. It works 100% of the time. The gal that I was just talking to you about, that I was, you know, please hand me a gun, let me shoot myself. Okay, I said, look, I can't take it anymore. Here's this sheet. Use the I am. Now sit up straight. Take a deep breath. Okay? Do you like warm soft bread? I like warm bread right out of the oven. Okay, great. Say it. Say it with enthusiasm. Guess what she was doing after about 30 seconds? Smiling. Okay, we can change the wiring of the brain. Now, you're going to do this exercise. Listen to me. If you're clinically depressed or anxious or anything that the crazy psychotic word or psychiatric world has told you, you do this 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day. Okay? What are you going to do? That 10 minutes a day, you're reprogramming your brain and you're changing the chemical assault on your body. Does that make sense? So there, you know exactly what to do. I mean, these are the keys. If you've been misdiagnosed with that psychotic disorder, nerve supply, exercise, nutrition, rest, and prayer and meditation. Now, this right here, for all of because we're going to get a ton of people saying, oh no, my doctor recognized the chemical imbalance, I need these drugs, okay? Over 130 references, okay, for the people that are detailed oriented. Nothing was said here that ain't based in science, okay? 130 references. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Okay, now, any questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
About pink sugar. All the sweet and low sweeteners.
Sweet and low.
Sweeteners.
Oh, the chemical sweeteners are completely poisonous and they're neurotoxic. Don't give it to your cat. Don't even give it to a neighbor that you dislike. Okay, they're completely poisonous. Okay, if you're going to eat a sugar, raw coconut or cane sugar, coconut sugars are going to be okay, but the raw sugar, so it has minerals in it. The more processed you get, the worse it is. The more chemicals, like what's better, the pink stuff, blue stuff, or yellow stuff? They're all toxic. Okay, they're all toxic. You're talking depression, anxiety, joint pain. It's poisonous. It's a chemical. Your body's not designed to take it. Yes, sir.
What does the hippocampus do?
It actually, it connects, it kind of directs a lot of activity. In fact, with a lot of brain structures, they're not exactly sure what exactly. It's like the frontal lobe is involved also in hippocampal activity, and that's involved in impulse control. Okay, and it also coordinates a lot of different functions. The hypothalamus also communicates with the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus has sensors inside of the body. It kind of works in conjunction with everything else, but it's one of the few structures that we can measure in size. And so it's a great indicator. If there's an actual plasticity of the brain, one structure in the brain that we can measure has a shrinkage, and then we can do a post measurement on it and show it growing. And say, look, you're doing the fish oils, you're exercising, you got your nervous system working right, you've changed your diet, you've dropped all the toxic drugs, man, you know, no wonder you're feeling better. We've got objective analysis that shows you are feeling better. Or just assume it's bad, do all the things, right things, and you know it's going to grow.